Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas. And I sort of can't believe what I'm about to tell you, but our guest today is Academy Award-winning screenwriter and director Quentin Tarantino. Yes, that Quentin Tarantino. If you're still not sure who I'm talking about, he is the man behind Pulp Fiction, Kill Bill, Django Unchained, Inglourious Basterds, and so many other movies. And today he talks with me about his new book, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is a novelization of his 2019 film of the same title. The Stacks Book Club pick for July is The Best We Could Do by T. Bowie. We'll be discussing the book on the show on Wednesday, July 28th with Mira Jacob. If you're looking for a way to support the work of The Stacks, please join us over on Patreon. You contribute $5 a month and earn perks like our monthly virtual book club, discounts on merch, and more, including being a part of our incredible Stacks Pack community. To join, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And here's a thank you to our newest members of the Stacks Pack: Amanda Sanford, Caitlin Bowie, Rachel Block, Katie Rutterer, Leslie Tapscott-Mull, Sarah Hess, Charita Lee, Vivian Shields, and Christina Fury. Thank you all for making this show possible. All right, now it's time for my talk with the Quentin Tarantino. All right, everybody, I am here today with Quentin Tarantino. You probably know him as a world famous, once in a lifetime type director, but he also just wrote his first novel called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is sort of based on the book based in the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So Quentin, welcome to the Stacks.
Good to be here. Thank you.
You don't know this, but I'll just start here because it's the only place I can start, is that you have the same name as my son.
I do. Oh, yeah. You named your son Quentin?
I did. It's spelled different, but I have twins and one of them is Quentin.
Oh, excellent. Well, did you name him after the Faulkner character?
You know what? This is such a weird story. When we found out we were having twins, I always wanted a daughter named Quincy. And then when we found out they were boys, I didn't love the name Quincy for a boy. And then my friend was like, I was in preschool the other day with my kid and there's this really cute kid named Quentin. And I was like, that's it. That's the name. I love it. And then now every time I see it anywhere, I'm like, oh my God, obviously you had it first, but still, it's a cool person to share a name with, I feel like.
I'm very happy for any extra Quentins that there are in the world.
There's not that many of you all, so I love.
Whenever I meet a Quentin, I actually feel uncommonly close to them.
I'm Tracy with an I, so whenever I meet another Tracy with an I, I'm like,
right, exactly.
We're sisters. Okay, so we'll start sort of where we always start, which is in about 30 seconds or so. Can you just tell us about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to pose it. All right.
Well, we have like a whole hour to go deep dive, so this is sort of just give the people a sense of what the book is about.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, it's a movie novelization of my last movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I'm a big fan of novelizations. They were actually probably like my first adult books that I read as a young boy in the 70s, and I kind of started getting nostalgic for them. I dug out a bunch of my old novelizations and I reread them, and they were so much fun. I go, I should do one of these. And everyone seemed to like the last movie I did, so I thought, well, I should do it on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So that's how it became. That's how it came. I know you're probably asking about the plot, but the fact that it's a movie novelization is almost part of the plot.
Right.
But it's about a movie star from the Eisenhower era, who had a Western show in the 50s, in the early 60s, and now it's like 1969, and the Cultural Revolution has happened, and he all of a sudden, like him and a lot of his brethren, his pompadour brethren of his time, are finding themselves on the outside looking in, while the hippie sons of former movie stars are the shaggy-haired androgynous types have taken over the industry. And it's him and his stunt double, who named Cliff Booth, who was his stunt double for like a long time, but has kind of run afoul of the industry, and now is just basically his gopher.
Yeah.
And it's just as they traverse these changing waters of the counterculture of 69.
Yeah. Do you think that folks who've never seen the movie could start with the book?
I think you could. I'm not imagining there's going to be too many of those people.
Right.
All right. one, I think you could, and two, I'd like to have a conversation with you if you did. All right, but to hear where you were coming from. But the movie was pretty successful, so I was actually, I'm imagining that 95% of everybody who will read it in the next 2 years will be coming from having seen the movie.
Right. That's what I would imagine too. I've seen the movie and I read the book, but I was thinking about it kind of, because usually it's like, oh, read the book and then see the movie. And this is sort of the opposite of that. And so that's why I was wondering if you kind of imagined it as a standalone or if you think most people
would love it as a standalone. I just don't think that's a reality.
That's fair. That's totally fair. I'm curious, how did you approach writing this book? And I guess more specifically, a lot of the book is backstory to parts of the movie. Like there's moments, like the dog moment where there's this dog named Brandy in the movie. And in the book, we get this whole backstory of how Brandy and Cliff, found one another. And so I'm wondering how you approached that. Were you thinking when you were making the movie, did you know that backstory or did you get to just fill in the gaps as you were writing the book a few years later?
Well, I did know the backstory, not to the detail that I could write a chapter on it, but I did know it because I told Brad it. All right. So Brad knew the situation. There was a whole lot of stuff that I knew about the characters, but it wasn't because I'd written chapters on them. I just knew it.
Got it.
And I used it to inform Brad on his characterization and Leo on his characterization or Al on his characterization. And I did that through I did that through the movie. And now it was the case of now actually, putting it on paper and making it work as a book. How I wrote it, I mean, in a weird way, those isolated like Cliff chapters, which jump out of the narrative and like hop back to 5 years or 6 years or 8 years earlier. Those were kind of the easiest because, I mean, they were almost like short stories unto themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually took pride in the fact that they played like little pulp novels unto themselves starring Cliff.
Right.
Because he almost seems like a pulp character. He seems like a character out of like an Elmer Leonard novel or something. And all those things could be stories unto themselves. But what was interesting, though, was just the process of writing chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Because I've always fancied the way I wrote scripts in a novelistic way, where I didn't like have an outline, and I usually didn't know the end. I didn't know the end of the movie when I started, which is a complete no-no when it comes to writing scripts. Not that I was clueless. I mean, if I'm working in genre, so I have an idea where it's going. I mean, If I'm writing Kill Bill, I figure she'll probably kill Bill at the end. But exactly how she's going to kill Bill, I don't know.
Right.
So but I've always kind of fancied myself that I write these half-assed novels when I write my screenplays because there's all kinds of stuff that I know will never make the movie, but it just makes it a better reading experience. At the same time, writing a half-assed novel in screen form is different than writing a proper novel to be published and read by people who read novels. And it was very interesting. It was very interesting, the whole idea of starting again and not just trying to take my script and break it into prose form, but just to rethink it. And I had all this material, either the script or just old pages from all the work I had done on it, and then just making page 1 work, and then leading into page 2 and making page 3 work, and then it catches fire and goes on. And then, even just the idea that, I have, almost like 4 main characters. You have Rick, and you have Cliff, and you have Sharon Tate, and you have the Mansons,
right?
The Manson family. And I'm usually, more or less going from one story to the next story to the next story to the next story, and then back again. And so just juggling that and getting the right kind of rhythm on that. And, okay, so what's coming? Okay, now would be a good time for a Cliff backstory. Okay, now would be a good time to tell Charlie's musical aspiration story.
Did you struggle with finding the form of writing a novel as someone who's used to writing screenplays? Like, were there things where you and your editor had to sit down and your editor was like, listen, Quentin, we don't do this in books? Or did it come to you sort of naturally?
Well, I don't write screenplays the way most people write screenplays.
Right.
So, so me going against the form is almost part of what I do. But I didn't want to do it like an amateur, like I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Right.
Here's the way I kind of describe it. Like the biggest difference is just the fact that writing screenplays is really easy for me. I've been doing it for the last 30 years.
Right.
And I have complete confidence, and if it's not on the page, I don't have that much confidence, but I usually am very happy with what's on the page, and so it's just very easy for me. I mean, it's just that's just standard. When you're when you're good at something, it's it probably is because it comes easy to you. Writing a novel wasn't hard, but it wasn't easy.
Right.
It wasn't as easy. I had to think about it. I was really putting the sentences and putting the page and the flow of the page and the literary aspect under a microscope that you just don't put screenplays under.
Right. What is hard for you?
That's a good question. Well, here's the deal about that. I think a lot of people who write books will probably end up telling you this. Whenever I was facing a chapter that I was intimidated by, well, exactly what the hell am I going to do here? And it was rising to the occasion to meet the challenge. Usually those chapters became my favorite chapters when I was done.
That's super interesting. Did the book change at all from what you set out to write to what we have now in our hands?
Well, I hope so. I mean, that's kind of the way I write. I mean, I have that's part of my methodology is I have an idea that I want to do. I have something that I want to do. But at some point, I want the characters to take it from me.
Got it.
Wrestle it away from me. And even like when it comes to a script, I can kind of work out what's going to happen. I usually kind of work out what's going to happen from beginning to end, more or less, to some degree, when I start. But the thing about it is, by mid-script, it's completely different because now I know so much more than I ever knew before I started writing, and now I really know the characters, and that's when they usually wrestle the project away from me. And I do feel that happened in the book in a good way. I mean, one of the things that also I wanted to do is on one hand, I'm telling the story, but again, part of the story is the history of Hollywood at that time.
Right.
And, and the history of Hollywood that Cliff is coming out of. And so that became a big part of the book, about kind of similar to if a guy's writing a story about a couple of characters that are in the Civil War, where he's writing the story about Jeb and Abe, all right, in the Civil War at Gettysburg or whatever. But then there's a ton of history about the Civil War.
Right, of course.
Crammed in all the way through it. And I feel that's in there as far as maybe to a fault, all right, in this book.
Yeah, there's definitely a ton of history. And one of the things that happens throughout the book, and it's in the first page, is sort of this disclaimer that's like, anything that is resembling a person or a place or a thing that's not this, it's a historicalization, like this is historical fiction. But I'm wondering how you decided what parts to fictionalize and what parts to leave true to history. Because a lot of it is super true to history. The movies you mentioned, the actors you mentioned, the events that take place, the Manson family is living on Spawn Ranch in this book. Yeah. So I'm wondering how you kind of decided where to veer off into this fantasy of history and when to stay true to the history of history.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's if it doesn't have directly to do, usually, if it doesn't have directly to do with Rick Dalton himself, or Trudy Frazier or somebody, or two known actors in the piece. If it doesn't have to do with them, then usually everything is absolutely factual. It happened, it's real, and I'm making a real reference usually. When I'm referencing the movies Rick did, since he didn't exist, those are obviously
right.
Phony. But also, I have a little bit of a latitude because, I'm dealing in a reality where Sharon Tate lived.
Right, of course.
So that's not exactly our reality, even as close as it is.
Right.
So that's why I can kind of jump in the future and tell you what happened to Trudy later in her career, because we're existing in the reality where Sharon Tate lives.
Right. Did you find that giving yourself that permission made it easier or harder to tell this story?
Oh, it made it really easy because I wanted to be as factual as possible, except for those breaks.
Right.
But I wanted those breaks to be so good that, like, the average reader who's not a world-known cinephile is like, okay, wait a minute, what's real, what's not real? I mean, and at a certain point, the Rick stuff starts sounding pretty real.
Right, right. That's interesting because I think about, I'm someone who loves history, and some of the things that I love about your films, like I'm thinking of Inglourious Bastards and Django, it's like you have the history there and then you get like Quentin Tarantino kind of on top of it, or like interacting with it. And with this book, it was interesting because I was actually able to take the time to look things up as I was reading. Whereas when I'm in the movie theater, I'm kind of just sitting there watching it being like,
you're going with the flow.
Yeah. And like, I didn't know that some of these people were really real in the book until I looked them up just because I was curious. Whereas when I saw it in the movie theater, I wasn't like, is that person a real person? So it added this element of like, oh, he was really accurate to this moment or not, which is sort of fun. It's sort of an added fun part of reading the book versus watching the movie. Which I really appreciate.
Like the Aldo Ray chapter.
Yeah.
Well, Aldo Ray didn't do that Spanish movie because it wasn't made, and there's no Cliff Booth for him to meet. But then everything else about Aldo Ray in there is completely true. I mean, including the whole incident that happened with him and Cliff. It was an actor who told me that story that happened between him and Aldo Ray on a location.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's a crazy story. We won't spoil it, but that was a great scene. Do you think you'd ever do this again with one of your movies? Turn it into a book?
Oh, no, I might very well. I mean, I'm this is my first foray into pulpy novel writing, which I'm kind of looking forward to, getting into. And I think there's at least two other of my screenplays I can imagine doing this to, but I would. I've got another book coming out fairly shortly, and that's a cinema book, right? It's like a nonfiction book with me, doing essays and talking about cinema of the 70s. But I think maybe my next novel might be an original. But it's going to be a pulp. It's a pulpy kind of story.
Right. When you write, do you think about audience? I ask this question to a lot of the authors that come on this show, and you'd be surprised how varying the answer is. So I'm wondering if you think about audience, and if you do, who you visualize your audience to be.
Well, I think more about audience when it comes to movies, because I am thinking of a collective group of people in a movie theater.
Right.
All kind of hopefully reacting in unison.
Right. Like the head turn moment in Rosemary's Baby.
Like, or laughter, or,
sure.
I want them to laugh here at this moment. And not just one guy, but like the whole theater. And then building them up and having them release and, all those, that kind of stuff. When it comes to, it's interesting. And, I guess to some degree I did let the audience go. I was thinking about more of the page, that making the pages and the chapters and everything something, since it is an individual experience. Thinking about it, pleasing myself, and then hoping that would please anybody who was reading it. It was actually interesting. There's that whole section in the book where it's like a small little couple paragraphs where Rick thinks about how he reads pulp western in between takes, and how he hadn't really thought about it before, because it's just something he's been doing forever. That it might be the most solitary thing he's done in his life.
Right, and he's like, I don't know how to explain what's going on in this book.
Yeah, I'm not used to doing that.
Right. I actually laughed at that moment because I was like, oh, Rick, if only you knew my life. All I do is talk about books out loud to people. But I definitely related to that because when I started this podcast, I had never really talked about books out loud before that. So it was sort of like, I was like, oh, I remember those days just a few years ago.
I actually remember actually doing that to my grandmother. My grandmother was like, almost, I had a few grandmothers, even a couple like great grandmothers, and they always read books. One of them was like in Tennessee, and like would read a box of books and then trade it to other people in her neighborhood, and they'd give her a box of books in return. But I remember and I actually know what she was reading. My grandmother, we were in East LA, was reading Murder on the Orient Express.
Oh, wow.
And so I go, she's at some point in the book, and I go, so what's the book about? And she had to tell me the story of Murder on the Orient Express. And then I go, well, could you read it to me? I mean, you're reading it. She goes, yeah, sure. Okay, so she just started reading it out loud to me. And then, I think 4 days later, okay, so how did it all come out? And she described the ending to me.
So did you ever end up reading it yourself?
I've read 10 Little Indians, but I never read Murder on the Orient Express. But I remember, okay, spoiler everybody, I remember she goes, well, actually, they all did it. They all did it? How did that work? Well, it's just...
I love that. That's such a nice shared experience around books, which is, my favorite thing in the world. How long did it take you to write this book?
Oh, that's interesting. I think I wrote the first 4 chapters before I started doing the press on the movie.
Oh, and so you had this idea pre...
Yeah, I had the idea sometime during the editing of the movie and everything, and during the post-production. And I wrote the first 4 chapters, and then I went to do the press. And you even hear me cryptically mentioning it, even though I don't say what I'm doing in some of the interviews. Then after everything was said and done, then I started working on it. And I went through the whole thing that happens with first-time novelist is, oh, wow, I think I'm on fire. This is really terrific. And then I read back what I've written. I go, oh, my God, this is terrible. Oh, my God. All right. So then and that made me put it away for a couple of months because I was so discouraged by what I had done. But then I pulled it out again, and then it wasn't quite as bad as I remember it being. And then then I wrote it again, and then that was better. It's definitely better, And then I think we went through it another time, and then it started being closer to what I wanted.
Right. I'm wondering about sort of you as this creative human, which you are, and Tarantino sort of means something to a lot of people. And when folks see your films and also in reading this book, there's something that is very Tarantino-esque, if you will, about your work. And I'm wondering if you think about that when you're making something. Are you like, have I gone to the place that only I can go? Is that something that's in your thought process as you're creating?
Well, I don't think I would use the adjective Tarantino-esque, all right, about my own stuff. But I do know I have a voice, and I'm reaching to, I'm trying to capture that voice. I'm trying to, or I guess a language, and when you're flowing with the language, and when you're not.
Right.
When it's halting, and when it's just flowing and it's just going. And so I'm always. I'm going for that. I mean, I remember it was actually funny though. Everyone likes saying, people. Well, I've talked to a few people, not even like interviewers, but just like friends of mine who've read the book, and and I make it very clear. No, it's not me telling you the story. It's a novelistic narrator.
Right.
Now, I will admit, me and the novelistic narrator sound very, very similar to each other, but we're not the same person.
Right.
But then I had a thing where I was when I was meeting with different editors over the manuscript, I met with a really good one, and I was talking to her, and I said, what did you think about the Lancer chapters? Because there's these chapters that happen from time to time where it tells the story, the book tells the story of the Western TV show that Rick's doing, but it does it as if it's just a chapter of a Western novel.
Right.
And it happens in the chapter, and then it goes back to the normal story, and then it happens like one more time. And what did you think of the Lancer chapters? And the editor goes, well, arguably, they're the best written chapters in the book because you're not trying to sound like you. You're trying to sound like Louis L'Amour.
Yeah.
And you're doing a pretty good job.
I loved those chapters also, and I think it's interesting because some of those scenes in the movie are also the ones that stick out in my mind. Like just so great. I loved, and I was like, what am I reading? You know, I read so many books and so fast, and I'm like, wait, what happened? What did I miss? And then I was like, oh my gosh, we're in the show. I get it now, and I did love those chapters.
Well, it was like, that was a way for me to monkey around with the novel form the way I've monkeyed around with movies.
Right. It was like adding your flair to it.
Yeah,
to the world.
And I think when the second Lancer chapter happens, the hope is that, like, you're like, I don't want to go back there. I'm in with these guys. But then by the time you get to the end of it, you're caught up in the Lancer story again.
I had the opposite. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be back. But by the end, I was like, okay, where are my friends? Like, I was like ready to go back to the guys. There's a good balance of sort of these different worlds. Like, I never felt stuck anywhere. I always was ready for the next moment and excited to see where you were going to take us, which I really appreciated. Because
that's really gratifying to hear. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Because my fear when I started the book was I was like, is this just going to be the movie? And it's definitely not just the movie. Like, there's a lot of new stuff and interesting stuff, and it makes the movie make sense. And I just got the book on Monday, and I finished it today. So now I have to go back and watch the movie again because I want to like see Brandy again and be like, oh, I know all about you.
I'm informed.
Exactly.
Of her trajectory.
That's totally right. I'm like, I need to know more I need to see how Brandy performs in her scenes now to see if she's really giving me the backstory.
Well, the thing that I was really trying to experiment with, I mean, not throughout the whole book, obviously, but in little sections, and it's something I haven't seen. I'm not saying other people haven't done it, but I haven't seen it before, and it was a real attempt to experiment with it. Was in some sequences, taking the kind of writing you see in film criticism and trying to make it work as a narrative.
Interesting.
And the obvious one of that is like that second chapter with Cliff Booth. But even but all throughout in some of the film history stuff, there is a writing that it's closer to the kind of writing of film criticism, but yet trying to attach it to a narrative.
Right. So speaking of like your voice being very close to the narrator and then that film criticism stuff, is that where we see you the most, do you feel like? Or do you feel like that even that stuff is also, removed from you and is more... I guess I'm asking if those are your opinions about those movies, or we shouldn't take them like that.
It would be easy enough for me to, especially since I'm doing like a film criticism book, all right? Just like if it was really just me making criticism, I could just take it out and put it in the next book. I mean, some people have said that, okay, well, all this Cliff Booth stuff, that's malarkey. That's just Tarantino talking and Tarantino telling us what he thinks about stuff. And that's not necessarily correct. Now, I will admit that me and Cliff have, when it comes to some of the things he says, we actually do agree in a lot of areas, but we agree for different reasons.
Huh.
The reasons he likes this stuff or the reason he responds are not the reasons I like it and the reasons I respond. He's not coming from a place of cinephilia. He's a man's man that, lived through World War II. I mean, I would imagine him thinking cinephilia is something unmanly.
Sure.
Or kid stuff, something kids would do.
Sure.
But he's surprised that he finds a worth in the 50s we're talking about, that he finds a worth in these foreign films.
Right.
That he's seeing, because he just looks at the Hollywood stuff as just juvenile garbage.
Right. Of course.
Well, that's not where I'm coming from.
Right. Your entry point, but maybe your final opinion, like good or
our
bad.
final opinions are pretty close, but we got there in two different
ways.
Journeys. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as Quentin is concerned, how critical are you a consumer of other people's art?
Oh, well, I'm that's kind of what I do. I'm always there's a whole lot of people that I'm a aficionado of and fans of, whether it be movie makers or screenwriters or novelists or whatever. In fact, I'm known to go down. It's actually one of my favorite things in the world to do is go down random rabbit holes. And then I'm just like, okay, that's what I'm doing for the next 2 weeks.
Right.
Is I'm watching movies by this director or this actor, or I get caught up on an author or a series of books or something.
And when you're kind of going down those rabbit holes, how much of what you know about the artist outside of the art are you willing to kind of let influence your critiques?
Well, I'm coming at it from an expert opinion, okay, is where I'm coming from. So I'm holding it to that standard. And like I said, I'm a little bit of an erstwhile film critic, so I'm judging it, as I'm watching it. But that's okay, all right, because the movie needs to work even beyond that and grab me by the throat anyway.
Right. Right. One of the things I've become deeply obsessed with as a person who talks about art, albeit I only pretty much talk about books, but I was a theater major. I've studied art and talking about art and criticism for so long. And I'm always curious with like, how much space should the artist give the critics or the audience and vice versa?
Yeah.
And I wonder if you have thoughts on that.
Well, an artist can actually completely disagree where an audience member or a critic is coming from, but once you let it go, it's theirs.
Right.
It's theirs to think. You can think. Especially if it's a critic who's stating their case, making their argument. You can pick apart their argument. Well, they obviously don't understand, or they got that wrong, or that and the other. But once you but nevertheless, at the end of the day, there's still the audience. And once you give it to the audience, that's it. And I'm a gigantic proponent of that. I mean, to such a degree that, there's all kinds of things in my movies that I don't explain and I don't tell you. If I wanted you to know something, I'd tell it to you. Mm-hmm. And I actually do think part of the author's job, whether you're writing a movie or writing anything, is like the way you parse out your information. If I'm telling you something, well, it's important that I'm telling it to you. And I'm giving you information, it's important I'm giving you information. But I don't have to give you information. If I don't, then that's important too. And then, but the reason I'm not giving it to you is not to just be opaque, but for you to make a decision yourself.
Right. And then do you think that at that point, whatever you put out, then it's up to the audience?
Yeah, it's like if when it comes to I know the briefcase in Pulp Fiction, whatever you come up with, what's in that briefcase, you're right.
Right.
For you, you're right, and I would never say what I think because I don't want to invalidate what you thought. Whatever you come up with, whatever decision you make in any of these directions, you're right.
Do you think that it's fair for audiences to connect the artist to the art?
Well, I guess it's just, yes, I guess so. I mean, they can be led astray by doing that, but it's pretty hard for me to watch a Peckinpah movie and not think about Peckinpah through it.
Right. Right.
And not think about his, trials and tribulations as his characters go through similar trials and tribulations.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I ask because I always struggle with is art a commentary on the artist, right? Like, is the product a commentary on the producer and why someone chooses to make art about one thing or another? Like why you chose to make a movie about Nazi Germany versus making a movie about, I don't know, Gettysburg, right? Like why? Yeah. And so I wonder sort of how you see the audience interpreting things, like how you see their role in understanding the artist, or if they should not, if they should just say, look, this is the thing and that's the only thing.
Yeah, no, I don't agree that, this is just a thing and you deal with it and it's a blank slate every single time, at least not with the artists that I like. I mean,
right.
What makes me, what usually makes me respond rather than one standalone movie or one standalone book, what makes me respond to them is a body of work.
Interesting.
And inside of the body of work, there's a character, there's a personality, there's a philosophy, there's a patina, there's, a zillion different other adjectives that you carry from one piece to the other. And they're not just standalone pieces. There can be strange outliers inside of there. And, but even how much of an outlier are they? Almost the fact that they stand opposite to the other ones almost seems to be the point.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's a good point. It's something that I'm obsessed with, and I don't know if I'll ever fully come to a realization about what I think about all of these things, because then, you start to think about people who are labeled as problematic or this and that. And then the question becomes, is their art still worthy of time and attention, or should we be turning our time and attention elsewhere? And, that's sort of the ultimate kind of thinking about these things.
Well, it's a weird thing for me because you're using the word problematic. I've always considered problematic like a good adjective.
Really?
All right, especially when it comes to characters.
Sure, characters, but what about the artists themselves? If we know that the artist is doing things that are criminal or criminally adjacent, how do we understand the art through that context? And is the art then worthy to consume, right? Like, let's pull something out of the headlines from this week as like Bill Cosby, like watching the Cosby Show now means something totally different than it did.
Well, look, you're right. Okay, so that's a good example. Okay, so maybe the Cosby Show is affected.
Right.
Because he was presenting this false version of himself and the whole family concept and everything. And this is me just making an arbitrary thing. All right. So maybe that is effective. But at the end of the day, those movies he did with Sidney Poitier aren't that affected by it.
See,
Not that I've watched them since he's been to jail, but I think I could still watch Uptown Saturday Night and still enjoy it.
You think so? I know that I just get like that cringy feeling where I'm like, I can't be here. Like I could watch another movie right now that I've never seen before that doesn't have someone who,
I guess, here's the thing about that. Look, I haven't done that yet, so I can't say for sure.
Sure. This is all hypothetical.
But I would like to think I could, because Sidney Poitier doesn't deserve that. All the other people don't deserve that.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, but it's interesting. There's not a yes or no answer. I guess to that. But then, look, it's interesting because Bill Cosby kind of becomes a lightning rod. He's in the thing right now. But so maybe not Bill Cosby per se, but but there's other artists. Well, maybe they run afoul of the times right now, but that might not be the case 20 years from now.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, these things change. The way that the culture, in air quotes, kind of engages with people changes over time, right? Of course, we all know that, because going with the Cosby example, there were murmurs about him for years and years before there was any, legal action. And the culture allowed for that, right? And so, of course, there's a changing of the culture. But there's so many people that I think about. For example, my favorite movie, or one of my favorite movies, is Gone with the Wind. And as a Black woman, that's a pretty controversial take in 2021. I feel like people get on me a lot about it. But it is my favorite movie. And I think about it a lot. And I think about why I like it and why I don't like it. And there's Margaret Mitchell and the movie itself and the portrayals of people and all of that. But at a certain point, I have to make a decision as the audience, as the critic, as the viewer, of what I'm willing and able to take in from a piece of art. And a lot of the outside stuff plays into it for me. And I guess.
But I think also there is another aspect to it to look at, and I see you articulated that really well. But I think another aspect is like, okay, I brought up Peckinpah recently. Well, he seems to be a pretty fucked up dude.
Sure.
All right. And, but he threw all of that into his work. Now, do I want to be married to him? No. Do I want my daughter to marry him? No. But ultimately, I don't care.
Right.
I care about what he did.
So I guess it just becomes that every piece of art is sort of up to the viewer of what they're willing to handle, how much they want to take in.
But but in the case of Peckinpah, I think all those demons are what made his art.
Sure. That's that whole other idea of like the mentally troubled artist, I think that's like this fantasy that we have, that to be a good artist or to create.
Yeah. I don't buy that as an axiom, but in some cases, yeah.
Yeah. I think in some cases it's definitely true. It's just one of those things where I'm always like, yeah, we're as a culture, we're obsessed with the troubled artist.
Like, do you really care that Charlie Parker threw his life away, all right, with heroin, or do you care that the heroin made the greatest jazz records ever made?
I don't know. It's all, I mean, that's sort of the question, like the artist and the art and the art and the
artist. It was his choice. And he was better on heroin. It's a fact.
I mean, I don't know if his loved ones would say that, but
yeah, well, his loved ones aren't talking about the records. All I have to deal with are the records.
Right. I mean, I guess that's kind of getting at the whole question of like, you know, how do we navigate the complexity of human and then the complexity of art, because they become so inextricably linked. And I think with movies, like you brought up, there are a lot of people who are involved, and so it's easier. But when you take like an album or something, or a musician, you know, it's a little bit different because it's sort of like just them, you know, even though there's other people around, it's sort of like that's their thing, like that's their vision.
Yeah, but if a guy's actually going into a room with a guitar or a piano, well, then no, that's him making his stuff. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Valentine's Day is upon us, and I've got love on the brain. Love for books, duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind the scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to traceythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the Stacks. I'm totally switching topics, like going complete 180, because this is some of the stuff that I always ask on this show, which is, how do you write? Where are you? Are you eating snacks, drinking beverages? Do you light a candle? Do you have a ritual? What is the writing setup for you in the writing of your novel?
I don't eat snacks or anything, but I'll start off in the day, maybe have a couple of cups of coffee and some water, and maybe I'll might make a drink at some point.
So you write all day?
For the most part, I mean, it was actually really interesting because this year I moved, for the most of the year to Tel Aviv with my wife, who's Israeli, and we had a child.
Congratulations.
Thank you. He's like 18 months.
Oh, wait, when? In December?
Yeah, no. He's February.
Oh, my kids were born in December of 2019.
Okay, cool. Okay.
So they're close in age.
Oh, so are they talking yet?
A little bit. They got mama, dada. Is really big right now.
Okay. My son says Abba, which is the Hebrew for daddy, and he can kind of say mama a little bit. He uses Abba for everything though.
My kids use mama
Only
for
a third
everything.
Of the time he means me.
Yeah. It's like mine is mama. Like, get out of my way is mama. Give me that is mama. It's
exactly.
I'm like, I don't know. Stop saying my name. Get away from me.
Yeah. But he really gets himself. He's understood. We really understand him when he's trying to say something.
I feel like their kids are very good at getting their point across. Actually, I'm going to let you go back to what you were saying, but I have to tell you this. So when I was pregnant, I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in the theater, and I was probably like, I don't know, 6 months pregnant, and twins, and one of them was really annoying in the womb, and one of them was very chill. And we were just like coming up with nicknames for them. And as we're watching the movie, the scene during the Lancer filming when he's talking about the book and he says that the guy is Easy Breezy, we started calling the twins Easy and Breezy in the womb for the rest of the pregnancy. And I had completely forgot about that once they were born. You know, we called them by their names.
Yeah.
But when I was reading the book last night and I got to that section, I was like, oh my God. And I like ran to my husband. I was like, remember Easy and Breezy? Remember we got it from the movie? So I thought that was great.
Did you see the little ad for the Easy Breezy book in the back?
Yeah, I did see it. I loved it. But anyways, you were saying, so your son was born during the writing and you moved to Tel Aviv.
Yeah, and my son was born this year, and so and this was the COVID thing hit, but like this was a year that I was planning on being at home most of the time anyway, because I was going to write a book and I wanted to be home with my little boy and my wife in our first his first year. So it was like a situation where I got up and had breakfast with them, and then at some point after breakfast, I retired to my office and then just started writing, and then during the day I would take breaks and come outside and hang out with them, and usually tried to finish up at like around 6 or so I was like ready to give him his bath with my wife.
Yeah, I love bath time, my favorite time of day.
Yeah,
it's almost bedtime.
It was a dream. It was just a dream to just not have any worries and just be in my office writing my book and hearing my son in the other room and hearing my wife in the other room and like, hey, come in the room. Leo's pointing at something and he means it.
That's the important part, and he actually means it. Because in the beginning, you're like, oh, he's pointing, and you're like, no, he has no clue what's going on.
He doesn't even have to go, oh, no, there's intention here.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that. They're so close in age. Okay, this is one of the most important questions you'll probably be asked on your entire press tour, which is, what is a word you can never spell correctly on the first try?
Oh, okay. That's a bad question for me because I have too many answers for
me
that.
Me too. Welcome to the club.
Restaurant. It's just so not phonetic, and I'm just so spell phonetically, and it's just so not phonetic.
Yeah. Okay, I have to ask you a question that I know you get all the time, but I can't not ask because I've heard too many different answers from you, so I'm going to try to nail you down here.
Okay.
Are you really retiring after your next movie? Because I heard you on Mark Maron this week, and you said that was not real, but I've also heard you say that is real, and so many people need to know.
Mark Maron was, because there was a whole thing going on that, like, you've made your last movie.
Oh, so you have
and
one
I was
more.
Like, no, that was taken out of context from a thing. All right, so no, it's not that I'm not going to retire at the 10th one. It was that I've just decided that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is my last movie. That was the thing that was floating around. So that's what he was referring to.
Okay, so there's one more. We got one more, and then it's over.
I haven't retired yet. There's another one out there somewhere.
But then you're going to retire from making movies, but you're just going to write a bunch of books. Then I feel like that's the vibe
idea.
I'm getting.
Books or plays or things like that.
So you're not done. You're just like
no,
over
I'm not
this.
done. I'm just done. Going out and making movies.
Okay, but are you the kind of person that when you say something publicly, then you have to stick by it even if you don't want to? Like, what if in 10 years you're like, holy shit, I have an 11th movie? Will you do it? Or do you think that you'll be like, I'm too proud? Because I'm like that. I would never do it.
Yeah, well, okay. I know people would snicker if I did that, but if it really was the story that I absolutely positively had to tell, 15 years from now or 20 years from now, then it probably wouldn't stop me. But that's not where I'm coming from. But even if I did do that, it would probably be, in the fans' mind, it would be exercise from those first 10.
Right. It would be like a separate thing.
It would be the film that falls in the old folks home category.
Right. Well, Jay-Z's retired like a bunch of times. So but
I don't want to be like that, all right? I'm not Sinatra who retired every 5 years just on account of because.
If you want to truly be a great, you have to retire and then unretire. Like Michael Jordan did that. A lot of people fake retire who are really, because it's like you still have something in you and you need to give it to them. I just want to open a door for you in case you decide you want to do something else.
I appreciate I appreciate your open door. I do appreciate it. I'm not being facetious. I do appreciate it. But ultimately, I'm a storyteller, so I don't need to cast a whole big movie and shoot a whole big movie and do costumes for a whole big movie. I could just write a story.
You could, but you might have to. I don't know.
Well, see, I take your point.
The people like to talk in absolutes. I'm just giving you some gray space, some wiggle room here. I'm actually just giving myself hope is what it is.
Well, I appreciate it, but I mean, I do like the idea. I mean, it's like, they're like, but, you're in a good place. Well, that's a great place to stop. I would, I don't want to lose my championship to Leon Spanks.
Right. I get that. I 1,000% get wanting to go out on top. And I feel like for a lot of people whose work that I love, I wish that they had thrown in the towel a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
So I get that.
I mean, especially for a lot of directors, it's like it's 2 or 3 movies more. If they had stopped before they did the last 2 or the last 3, oh my God, what a career.
Okay, but what if your next movie is not a hit and you don't like it? Will you go out on a flop? Would you? Could you?
Well, okay. Well, it doesn't have to be a hit, all right, but it has to be good, all right. No, that would fuck everything up.
It would. Oh my God, I'm going to tell all the critics I know to pan you.
I would need to redeem myself after that. I find it hard to believe if I was that happy with the script enough to make it as my last film, that would be that much of a failure in my eyes, at least.
Sure. No, sure. I just, I'm just thinking of scenarios.
No, you're countering me very cleverly.
I'm trying hard. Okay, we're gonna wrap up. I just have a few more questions, and this one is, you seem to like books a lot, so I'm excited to hear what you say. For people who love Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the novel, what are some other books that you might recommend to them?
Oh, that's cool. Okay. Well, the harder part is trying to tie it to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
It doesn't have to be completely tied. I keep that question super open. I tell people like what's it in conversation with. So there's a lot of strands. I get what you mean. I wasn't trying to write like Elmer Leonard, but people have been saying some of the reviews that I've been that the book reminds them of him to some degree. And I guess that is kind of true. I guess especially the Cliff character very much seems like an Elmer Leonard or Charles Willeford type of character. So, using that as an example, I think the Elmer Leonard book, City Primeval, High Noon in Detroit, is a good one to also check out. The entire Hope Mosley series that Charles Willeford wrote, which is Miami Blues, New Hope for the Dead, and Sideswipe. They're terrific. One of my favorite novel series. I'm also a big fan. Not that this is so much like my book, but I kind of aspire to the sense of fun that this book has, is Dan Jenkins' novel for Semi-Tough. I don't know that one.
Oh, I think it's just one of the funniest books ever written.
Okay, I'll check it out. I heard you on Mark Maron, and obviously I said this, talk about all the Manson books you've read.
Yeah,
and I need to know, I guess I fancy myself as a person who's read a lot of Manson books and likes them, and then like a little obsessed with Manson.
Oh, how did you like the Manson? How did you like the whole Manson chapter that deals with him about his whole musical aspirations?
Well, so I had read the Manson book that you reference by Jeff Gwynne.
Oh yeah.
And so I mean, I'm pretty familiar with that, like with that history, the Terry Melcher stuff. So I wasn't surprised by any of it.
I'm not telling you anything that hasn't already been written in other novels. I'm just writing it in my words.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, any chapter that has anything to do with Manson, I'm like super into. I have a weird like love of, cult leader kind of vibe. So I like that stuff a lot. But I want to know why. I didn't know Helter Skelter was not real.
Oh, it's a well-written book. He's a really good writer.
It's a great book.
Yeah, Bugliosi wrote a terrific book as a writer, but as a public defender, he came up with a whole bunch of malarkey just because he kind of didn't have a case.
Right. No, as a prosecutor.
As a prosecutor, yeah. As a prosecutor,
I see.
He didn't really have a genuine case against Manson.
Right.
And so he came up with the most outlandish theory possible and pushed it. And then they acted so outlandish that they just fed into his narrative.
Right. I see. Okay. I
And
thought
then,
you were saying it was totally like false, and I was like, wait, that is the way that I got into the Mansons. So
well, that's the way most people,
right,
got into Manson. But the whole concept that he sent them up to Cielo Drive to start a race war, I mean, that's just a bunch of bullshit.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I love Helter Skelter. I think it's an incredible read. Bugliosi is an incredible storyteller.
It's absolutely an incredible, it's absolutely an incredible read.
Yeah.
But if you're a Manson novel aficionado, you've got to read the Tom O'Neill book, Chaos.
I haven't read that. That's the one that came out
That's
like
a
year or two ago. Okay, I have to read that one.
That's
I've read
the one. All the other Manson books have led to that book.
Okay, I need to read it. It's been on my list for a long time because I read the Manson, the Jeff Gwynne, and then I read the Jim Jones, Jeff Gwynne also because that's another story.
That Manson book was great because I learned a lot because it treated him as a biography rather than
and it spent a lot of time in his childhood and like in his incarcerated days and all that, which I thought was super
there's some things in it that I like. Well, why are you the only person to ever mention that Manson went to the crime scene on that night?
Right.
Where did this come from?
Right. I see. Okay, that makes sense. I was like, I have to ask him about this because I was in the grocery store and when I heard that, I was like, what does he mean this is fiction? But I hear what you're saying. It's like the prosecutorial.
Yeah, but
storytelling.
But the book is but his book is backing up his prosecutorial case.
Right, exactly.
Case.
It's his case.
Yeah.
In written form. I see. Okay. Here are my last two questions for you. One is what do you hope that folks will keep in mind when they're reading Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
That's an interesting question. I'm trying to think what it means actually. I don't know if this is a good answer for that question, but I hope they find it humorous and they have a good time.
That's a great answer.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 1,000%.
I hope they have a fun time reading it, and I hope and I think it's kind of witty. I think it's funny. I think you can laugh, and I just hope they have. I hope they have a real good time, reading it.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, here's the last one. If you could have one person, dead or alive, read your book, who would you want it to be?
Pauline Kael.
That was easy for you.
Yeah, well, she's kind of like my mentor, know. So I think she kind of might have. I think she might have got a kick out of the movie, and I think she might have got a kick out of the book. Actually, Pauline Kael made it a point from time to time to read novelizations of the movies she was reviewing.
Interesting.
She didn't go off and hold court about it, but she would make but from time to time in a review, she would just make a random reference to the novelization.
I like that. That's very
cool. And she was just reading it to have a fuller understanding of the book. She would, she's like one of the few critics who would she'd read, she'd see a movie and then she'd go and read the book that it was based on just to make to have a fuller understanding of the story and to, make observations.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, no, some people would, that's understandable that people would do that, but for her to read the novelization, that's going a little extra. That's
the extra
going
mile.
A little extra bit.
Yeah.
I remember her review of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. She goes, it was something to the effect of, I read the novelization. It's like written by an illiterate Thomas Pynchon.
Super kind, very gracious review.
Actually, but that actually suggests it's going to be kind of fun, frankly.
Sure, that's true. That's true. Oh my goodness. Well, I will let you go. This has been so amazing, Quentin. Thank you so much for your time and for coming on this
my pleasure.
book
Hey,
podcast.
let me ask you a question. And I've always done this. Like if we were talking about one of my movies, I'd ask you what is your favorite scene. Did you have a favorite chapter
in the book?
Yeah.
I really liked the stuff with Mirabella Trudy.
Oh,
and I was thinking about this honestly because I've seen the movie. I was envisioning the actors and I just loved that little girl so much. Mm-hmm. So I was remembering how much I enjoyed that. So that scene sticks out to me. And then I also really liked the stuff with them on Spawn Ranch. I liked,
Oh, really?
I liked the squeaky stuff. I like that interaction between her and Cliff, like when he goes to see George.
Yeah.
When he goes to see George, and like how she, is eavesdropping. And I like how we can't hear what they're saying, but we get to hear what she hears. Like, can't make this part out, indistinguishable, but she heard this or she heard that. So I liked those scenes.
Oh, that was that was interesting because it was like, oh gosh, this is one of the best scenes in the movie. I mean, am I going to really try to compete with that? I'm going to compete with the production design of Spawn Ranch on a book. But then when I thought, well, if I just do it from Squeaky's perspective, I can do the exact same scene, but that makes it genuinely different. You're not from Squeaky's perspective in the book, in the movie. And to do it from her perspective, when you only see what she sees, I thought that was like a legitimate way to tell the scene.
Yeah, I like that. And I also said before, I love the Lancer scenes.
Yeah, you did. That was cool.
Those were awesome. I loved those scenes. And it kind of functioned in the same way that the scene does in the movie where you're watching Leonardo DiCaprio and all of a sudden he calls for a line and then you're like, oh my gosh, we're in the filming.
That was the intention. And the thing is the intention in the movie was like, what the fuck are we watching this Western scene that doesn't mean anything? So long. And then just as you get caught up into it, he calls line.
Yeah, that moment is so great. So another story about when we saw this in the theater is that my husband, who never has to pee, who's a huge fan of yours and has seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood so many times that now I'm like, are we watching this again? When we saw it in the theater, he went pee during that scene. And I'm so pregnant. I could not get up. I was like, I'm not going pee during this movie. And he comes back and I just lean over and I go, I think you missed the best scene in the whole movie. Because he missed the line. I mean, he's now seen it 100 times, so it's fine. Yeah. But like in that moment, I leaned over and I was like, you definitely missed the best scene.
What's going on with you? I have our twins using my bladder for a speed bag and I didn't miss it.
And I was like, you just missed this, like, that scene is so, I mean, I still think about it, like, just randomly. I'll be like, wow, that was awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm still leaving the door open for you to not be done making movies, but also leaving the door open for whatever you do next. You've done it in a very
charming way, I might say. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Quentin, and everyone else. Go ahead and get your copy of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by Quentin Tarantino. It's a novel. If you've seen the movie, it's different. I promise. It's 400 pages, and I read all 400 pages, so that's how you know it's different. Because if it was the same, there's no way I would have done it. And thank you, and everyone else. We will see you in the stacks.
Okay, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. This is a really fun interview.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for listening, and thank you to Quentin Tarantino for being my guest. I'd also like to thank Rachel Alinsky and Natalie from Row PR for making this interview possible. Our July book club pick is The Best We Could Do by T. Bowie, which we will discuss on July 28th with Mira Jacob. If you like what you hear, consider supporting The Stacks by becoming a patron. Go to patreon.com/thestacks. And please make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and a review. For more from The Stacks, follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram, at The Stacks Pod _ on Twitter, and check out our website, thestackspodcast.com. Sebastian Alcala is our sound editor and producer. Our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tagirajis. The Stacks is created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.